It's my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished keynote speaker, Crystal Barnes. Crystal is Senior Vice President, Global Responsibility and Sustainability at Nielsen. As she comes to the stage, well, not too far to go here, Crystal has been with Nielsen for 13 years. She leads Nielsen's social and environmental responsibility programs across the areas of philanthropy, volunteering, and pro bono investments. She's also in charge of Nielsen's ESG efforts, including external reporting, stakeholder inquiries, and client assessments. Before that, she headed Nielsen's industry relations team and also played a key role in expanding Nielsen's thought leadership around understanding consumers. Her full bio is in your kit. With that, I'd like to introduce Crystal Barnes from Nielsen.
Hello, hello, good morning. Again, on this very sunny spring day. So a little bit about myself. I was actually just looking at the photo thinking it's a little old, but a little bit about myself. As Claire mentioned, I've been at Nielsen for 13 years. And so I joined Nielsen 13 years ago in a time when there was actually a lot of noise in the industry around whether or not Nielsen was inclusive of communities of color in their sample. Now, what has been interesting about that journey in developing the first public affairs department, developing the first community relations department, is there are themes that happened and occurred during that time that are very relevant to the journey that we're all on today. The first being trust and transparency. We knew internally that, of course, our samples were representative, and of course, diversity and inclusion was a part of our mission and a part of our strategy. However, because we weren't transparent about our business practices and transparent with the community to show them who we were and what we did, it was easy to kind of fall into the rut of the noise. Now, the second piece of it for us was this idea of continuous improvement. And so not only did we have to gain the trust of our stakeholders, and not only did we have to tell our story in a very easy way, but we also had to show that we knew we didn't know it all, right? And so in not knowing it all, we also had a commitment towards continuous improvement. And so trust and transparency and continuous improvement was something that was key for us back in 2004, if I'm doing the math right, and it's also key for us in 2017. And so with that, I want to talk to you all today about a simple notion of the fact that it just takes one. The power of one. And so it's a basic concept, nothing really earth-shattering about the power of one. However, the outcomes have increased Nielsen's ability, as Claire mentioned, to connect with the various stakeholders that have now made their way into our corporate responsibility journey. So since I'm up here on stage, it's easy to assume that Nielsen has it all right. And again, we don't. We're all in this kind of gray area as an industry, and we're trying to kind of figure it out. And so, as we kind of all know from our own personal and professional journeys, that what meets the eye isn't necessarily what you see. And so it's easy to kind of get caught up for us in terms of the outcomes that we're trying to pursue, the greater good. And there's value in the milestones that we have that help us to achieve our goals. And so what I want to share with you today is that for us, there's been value in that journey, extreme value in that journey. There was value 13 years ago in the public affairs department, and there's value and connection between those key themes in corporate responsibility. And so for us, it truly has taken one dream, one leader, and one action to create the outcomes that matter. But nothing for us happens, of course, without challenges and risks, problems that need to be solved and obstacles. And so when I look back at 2004 to where we are today, for me, there's one theme that I tell my team often, some of them are here today, is that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. In the minute that you can start to be comfortable being uncomfortable, now we can start to address the challenges and the new stakeholders and the diverse audiences in a way that's very authentic to our voice. And so comfortable being uncomfortable may sound pretty counterintuitive, but the one thing that you have to know is that it helps you to embrace uncertainty and conflict. So I invite all of you today to be comfortable being uncomfortable with me. Are you game? All right. So the next couple of slides, what you'll see through our history, I'll start there with our history, is this whole idea of being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And I want to kind of go over our history because for us, it helped to shape our corporate responsibility journey as well. So to set the stage very quickly, one of the things I want to know, make sure that we all know, is who Nielsen is, right? So Nielsen is a global performance measurement company who measures two things: what people watch and what people buy. Very simple. And we do that in 100+ countries around the world. And we do all of that service with our clients across the media space, the consumer packaged goods space, with manufacturers and retailers. And so as you can imagine, our journey as a company has evolved with the journey of the consumer, the increasingly diverse, demanding, and connected consumer, all of us in the room. 1923. Now, I certainly wasn't around in 1923, so you're going to have to start your speaker and audience relationship on the foundation of trust with me, okay? So 1923, we started with a 26-year-old founder who was backed by cash by his family and friends. Talk about a ride or die network, cash, right? So if that story translated today, it would be an eager young millennial started a GoFundMe campaign, raised the money to start his business. But we're back in 1923. So in 1923, we started with performance surveys for clients like GE and DuPont. We added market-based surveys. We launched our retail measurement service. We expanded globally. We expanded into the world of radio with new technology called the Audiometer. We launched our television measurement service, which most of you know us for today. And we continued to follow the consumer across, again, what they watch and what they buy. So to be clear, none of this happened without its peaks and valleys. So in 1930, we saw our revenue peak at a whopping $205,000 and declined 3 years later by 75% to $52,000. We saw our massive workforce of 45 employees, massive, fall to just 6. And we worked for years to refine and polish technology to support the growing demands of our clients and the growing demands of the market. So today, what does that look like? Today, with the move towards all things digital in the fragmented media space, Nielsen has to continue to follow the video. So no longer can we follow linear television. Whether you're watching video on your smartphone, whether you're streaming it, whether you're using your gaming console or your DVR, Nielsen has to follow those actions. And so in all of this movement that you'll see on the timeline, one thing that has been pretty constant in our history from our 26-year-old founder are 3 things: the audacity of hope, the courage to change, and the motivation to act. One dream. One 26-year-old's dream, backed by a pretty awesome support system, again with cash, which amazes me, has now become a $6 billion company with 43,000 members across 100 countries. And so I like to start with that story because when you understand what it means to be connected to a rich history like that, and when you understand what it means to be a member of an organization like that, you realize that it's not just simply a job, it's citizenship. And in the words of our CEO, every day, it's personal for us. And so speaking of personal, we learned very quickly through our rich history that everything we do, every move we make, every interaction that we have with our clients, it's personal. We learned that from Art Nielsen in 1923, and I'm constantly reminded of that from this cutie patoot here on the right-hand side, that everything that we do is personal. And so one action is personal. So our CR journey for us at Nielsen, again, began with one dream. Our history began with one dream, and our corporate responsibility journey began with one dream. About 6 years ago, an eager young millennial saw an opportunity to harness the spirit of service that we had really ingrained in our DNA and formalize it. And so, like any young, eager millennial, and it wasn't me, any young, eager millennial would do, he put a business plan together, and he pitched it to our CEO and our vice chair. And within, I want to say about a week and a half, he was stripped of his current job and put in the driver's seat of our corporate responsibility journey. Just by a dream, one dream. And so as a company, we started our corporate responsibility journey with the usual suspects, an annual day of service. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you have an annual day of service, one day of the year in our organization where our associates from around the world come together to have an impact. Today, and these are some of our colleagues around the world, they're doing things like building schools, painting houses, mentoring students, feeding those in need. Those are all activities that happen on our annual day of service. For us today, and we actually just finished our 6th annual Global Impact Day last month, that is now translated into over 23,000 associates on one day across 89 countries with about 1,500 projects every single day of the year. Every single day, one day a year. And so again, seeing our corporate responsibility journey and where it started, that was one dream by one millennial now realized. And so if you think about our approach to global consumer measurement and how it's evolved as a company, how we have evolved as a company, Nielsen's approach is not where it was 7 years ago. And it's not where it was when I joined this team 5 years ago. We're in a very, very different place. That's had starts and stops, growth spurts, and this is what the layout for us looks like today, and I'll take you through it a little bit. So on the right, the red circle, you'll see Nielsen Cares. Again, that's our employee engagement program. That's where all of our volunteers identify and activate and lead relationships with nonprofits across the world. Now, what's been interesting about that first bubble is that not only did we take a kind of stance and put an annual day of service together, but our associates were looking for us to support them in that journey, but then they were also looking for us to make a public stance. And so one of the things that we did was we introduced a concept called 24 hours of dedicated volunteer time, which essentially allows our associates around the world to have 24 hours to go into the community on Nielsen. And many of them do much more than that, and we encourage that. But what it also meant was that we need to put our skin in the game publicly. And so each year, as an organization, we volunteer $10 million worth of pro bono and skills-based volunteering with nonprofits around the world. Now, with the great traction of Nielsen Cares came additional stakeholders that started to enter the mix. And so we had to grow from 1 pillar to 4 in 4 years. And so we had to add environmental sustainability into the mix, right? And so we don't at Nielsen necessarily have a thing. Our thing is data. And so we're at the very kind of infant stages with Nielsen Green, but for us, it's understanding what our global footprint looks like and how we can reduce it. The newest area, which I think is very relevant to the conversation today for us, is this whole idea of responsible practices and reporting. So no longer do we know that consumers care. No longer do we also know that our associates care, and they're willing to make some pretty tough decisions based on how much they want to ensure that they work for a company that is responsible. But now we have these folks called clients coming to the door. And now we have this audience called investors asking. And so we had to figure out a way to effectively answer those inquiries and answer all of the needs and demands of that group. And so we launched this practice called Responsible Practices and Reporting to do so. And as a part of that, again, we had to get public about our position. So we went through the process of launching our first global responsibility report 1.5 years ago, which was quite the journey. And we went through the process of doing a non-financial materiality assessment because it allowed us to interact with our various stakeholders to understand what was important to them as they see Nielsen, but then also to understand how that relates to its importance to our business and how it relates Nielsen to the community and what that means. And so that process for us really is the background and the springboard for all of the reporting that we do in global responsibility and reporting. And this last piece, I'll touch on it lightly because I have a really great example to share with you, is this whole idea of pro bono data. We know that we know a lot about data as a company, and we know a lot about consumers. And there's a really kind of neat and interesting way, an engaging way to share that with the nonprofit space that will help them to be more efficient and effective, but also help them to reach their goals. So this is what we look like today. And in all of these multi-stakeholder demands, they've all challenged us to think about corporate responsibility, as Claire mentioned, through the lens of total ESG. Total, environmental, social, and governance. And every opportunity that we have to speak about it at Nielsen, we do so through that lens. It also helps us to show that the relationship between corporate responsibility and the relationship between your business strategy are not mutually exclusive. They're the same thing. And when you speak about them, you can speak about them together and in totality. So I wanted to take a second to look at Nielsen Cares, that first bubble in the red, and go a little bit deeper. So like many companies kind of barreling down the road of do good, we took a moment to pause and reflect as an organization to try and understand, what do we have? Beyond inspiring associates, beyond projects around the world with local nonprofits, what do we have that could be a social game changer in the marketplace that put in the right hands at the right time could create magic? Data. It almost smacked us in the face. Data, right? And so what we knew was not only did we have the data, but we had the data scientists and the analytical minds to go along with that data. And that, for many nonprofits, is the perfect cocktail. And so our Data for Good initiatives, which was on the top right, or top left for you all, really looked to Nielsen's core competencies around data and analytics to drive positive change beyond Nielsen into our communities. What you'll see here is how we kind of look at the landscape of corporate responsibility with the social element of what we do. We start very wide and broad with Global Impact Day. We, of course, have our annual calls to action at Nielsen. And then we start to get really narrow around skills-based volunteering and hands-on volunteering, more emphasis nowadays on skills-based volunteering. And then that final piece, again, the pro bono projects piece. You'll see some of our nonprofit partners at the bottom. And this year, we not only met that $10 million commitment, but we exceeded it to $11.8 million in 2016. And so with that, I want to invite you to meet Amanda Welsh. So Amanda, one leader, was leading our data science strategy at Nielsen. And that's not enough. Amanda consistently tries to find ways to build her team, to build her leaders, and to train them and sharpen their skills in unconventional ways. 3 years ago, Amanda turned to our corporate responsibility team to help her engage her top talent in meaningful projects that would grow them as leaders, but also had a required social good element. Now, we know that there are over 805 million people around the world who do not have enough food to eat, according to the World Food Program, which, as most of you know, is the world's largest humanitarian agency fighting against hunger. WFP has a dual mission. They have to not only identify the people who need the food, but also determine the best way to distribute it. Distribution. That's something we know a little bit about at Nielsen. And so with that, we knew that from the distribution perspective, that could also be a challenge, as you can imagine. So in areas that are war-torn, or areas that have limited transportation or infrastructure, or natural disasters could be a problem, the distribution piece could be a challenge. And so what was interesting for us as an organization was that their process for collecting the data was very similar to our process with our consumers. They send men and women door to door, or oftentimes tent to tent, to really further examine what the needs are. And again, as you can imagine, that's costly and dangerous. And so for those reasons, the World Food Program, they had a technology need. And at the time, with the right leader, one leader, we had an answer. So Amanda and her team, and I apologize, you can't see what's in black, but I'll explain it to you. Amanda and her team, they worked with WFP for a year to modernize their data collection process to include mobile technology. Again, mobile technology, something we know a lot about at Nielsen. We helped them to figure out how to collect the data, the methodology, how to analyze it, and how to leverage in-country expertise. And by the way, while this project was going on, the Ebola crisis struck. So talk about real-time solutions, real-time problem solving, and really getting in there and working with a nonprofit in the trenches. So the results for WFP, of course we have to measure the results, was an 83% time savings, 83%, and a 50% cost savings. Game changer for them. It takes one bold leader, passionate enough about her team's development, curious enough about how to activate that learning experience within the confines of a critical social need. Amanda helped her team to find higher purpose in what they do every day, but she also helped our team to recognize that data really does have the power to save lives. And so we went forward trying to deliver on that mission from Amanda's passion. So it wouldn't be a Nielsen presentation if I didn't talk a little bit about the consumer. So one last audience, the consumer. So research tells us, and I think you guys have all heard this, but research tells us that consumers care and they're willing to pay more for products and services that they feel come from a company that has a vested interest in social and environmental change, right? And so if you translate that sentiment into actual shopping behavior, they're seeking transparency and simplicity in their packaging and in their ingredients. So no MSG, no red dye number 5, 6, 12, 14, no high fructose corn syrup. Those are all things that consumers are not interested in anymore. Clean labels for consumers are king, or queen. And consumers are paying attention to products and want to publicly put themselves on the line for those products. So if you look at, this is from our 2016 social media report, if you look at the heavy social media users, 30% of those thought that it was important to engage social media in order to support their favorite companies. And if you think about what that support looks like and how sustainability and ESG plays a role into that support, that number's pretty powerful. Also, 39% believe that finding out about products and services is an important reason for using and activating their social network. That's just about 40% of heavy social media users. So what's clear is that they care and that their actions matter. And today, why that's even more important is because all of us, all of our brands, are one tweet, snap, or post away from PR success or PR nightmares, right? I see a lot of heads shaking in the room. So it's clear that one company's actions, whether they're offering organic products to meet consumer needs, whether they're sharing their responsible practices publicly, or they're investing in sustainable farming, it's clear that one company's actions can create real-time consumer action that we see in stores and that we see online through their social media activity. So again, our research shows that of the top 20 manufacturers, they had very limited growth in 2016. And as of April 2017, we're seeing that a year-over-year trend of decline by 0.5% in total store dollar growth and 0.2% in total store volume growth in retail. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, right? Point anything doesn't seem like a lot. However, if you consider that the population grows 1% or more, it actually means a lot. Declines in volume and dollars, deflation, e-commerce, and income disparity are all factors that contribute to the big challenge that retailers are facing. And so in an economy that's stagnant for some, these vocal supporters that we talked about on the previous slide, the vocal social media supporters, those consumers are pushing companies towards greater transparency and also a commitment to sustainability, which is a win-win for all of us. So today, for us as CR leaders, it's important to understand the various roles that diverse audiences play, that diverse stakeholders play in our journey. One action is a multiplier. And in many ways, we're all multipliers for our organizations. By listening to our consumers, by listening to investors, by listening to employees, and by listening to clients, we really unlock opportunities to create stronger bonds, stronger relationships that pay dividends in inevitable times of prosperity and times of crisis, like I mentioned when I first started at Nielsen. So in my experience, the power of one is limitless. One leader, one dream, one action. Each individual company in here, we can't do it alone. But united, we can create change together. So I want to leave you with this picture as an image of the power of one. To the left, you'll see Art Nielsen, who I described earlier as a part of our journey. And to the right, you'll see, again, my 6-year-old daughter, Paige Barnes. Now, to your immediate eye, they probably don't have a lot in common. Matter of fact, they don't even know each other. However, One thing that they might have in common, that we all have in common, is that the power of one. It just takes one. And so I applaud all of the work that you all do day to day, and I encourage all of us to continue to think inside, outside, around the box, continue to push the limits so that we can create a better world with corporate responsibility. Thank you. I guess are we doing Q&A?
Yes.
Okay. How was the World Food Program project funded? Did World Food fund it? Aid orgs or donors? I think I read that right. So we actually, it was a full, we absorbed the cost for the time and the data that we worked with them on. So it was a pro bono project for us. I forget how much it ended up being worth of in-kind and pro bono services, but we absorbed that within Nielsen. And so the way that pro bono projects work for us is there obviously has to be an opportunity for teams and availability for teams to offer up their time and to offer up space within their project time frame. And so that's a requirement for us as an organization that if a pro bono project comes in, we screen it and we go through a process to see if there's capacity on our end. And then we work through a really long process to understand what the needs are of the nonprofit and then marry it with what the opportunities we have internally at Nielsen. And so from a pro bono project perspective, it's something that we fully absorbed as an organization. And the key to that project was Amanda, because Amanda had a need to help develop her leaders. And so because of that, she was willing to take on the cost of doing a program like that with the World Food Program. Why has Nielsen chosen to focus their CSR efforts in food? What is the link with the brand? Good question. So we have 4 pillars at Nielsen: hunger and nutrition, diversity and inclusion, education, and technology. And so one of the reasons why hunger and nutrition is one of our pillars at Nielsen is because we know a lot about what people eat and buy in stores. And so it was important for us to ensure that we aligned anything that we did from a corporate responsibility perspective, again, connecting ESG to your business. It was important for us to align what we did from a corporate responsibility perspective with what we were good at as an organization and where we knew that we could uniquely affect change in the marketplace. And so hunger and nutrition is one of our pillars because, and World Food Program is one of a million stories that I could tell you. I actually sat and grappled with which one I was going to tell you because we have great relationships with Feeding America and others. But it was an opportunity for us to dig deeper into what we traditionally supply and provide to our clients in a very uncommon and non-traditional way. So that's why hunger and nutrition, and that is why World Food Program. Please share new work in impact sourcing, Global Impact Sourcing Coalition, which goes beyond traditional NGO nonprofit space. Did I read that right? So impact sourcing is something, I will admittedly say, impact sourcing is something that we are just starting to dip our toe in. We don't quite have a core strategy around impact sourcing just yet, but it's something that we have a strong relationship. So talk about folding new stakeholders into the process. We have a very strong relationship now, not only with our investor relations team, but with our supply chain team. And so impact sourcing is something that we work very closely with our global supply chain leader to try and figure out the impact that it's going to have for our business and what it can mean for our organization moving forward. So more to come on impact sourcing from Nielsen. Does Nielsen fund small nonprofits? Yes, that was an easy one. Done. Next. We do. We have no, kind of limit. So I will say, so from a fund perspective, again, most of the work that we do in the corporate space around corporate responsibility is skills-based volunteering, pro bono work, in-kind services. And so when you say fund, we do take on projects for smaller nonprofits, and they're all welcome to reach out and try and scope out what a possible and potential project could be with Nielsen. So there's no limit. It could be a small nonprofit, a large nonprofit. We are an equal opportunity collaborator. How do you bring SDGs? How do you bring the SDGs into Nielsen CSR strategy? Another good one. So, like many companies, we are trying to figure out what the SDGs mean for our organization. We know that there are a lot of SDGs that apply to the work that we're currently doing. And so we're in the process now of narrowing down where we think we can have the most impact as an organization, and also figure out how we can add that kind of monitoring and evaluation element to the SDGs. I think that's what a lot of companies are struggling for, to try and figure out how they quantify the connection to a particular SDG. So we worked with the team at the UN, and we've done a lot of work to try and understand what's the most appropriate connection for us as a company. We're starting to, at the very basic stage, take what we currently do and tie it into what the SDG opportunities are, and then we'll build on that moving forward. But it definitely is an anchor in our program and will be moving forward. What do you think is more important for business? Listening to a myriad of voices and having impact for impact's sake, or providing direction based on mission and focusing on bold and impact goals? Well, that was a leading question. I'm gonna go with the latter. Providing direction based on mission and focus with bold and impact goals. Absolutely. And I think, you know what? I think that a lot of companies, when you start down this road, you do work for work's sake, and it's impact for impact's sake, because you're just trying to test the waters. You're trying to figure it out. And I think as your programs mature, at least that's what we've learned, is that as our program has matured, we're willing to dial back the amount of nonprofits that we deal with, or the amount of pro bono activity that we do for some really large, impactful programs like the World Food Program example that I gave you, that give us something tangible to point to, where you could see the results and the fruits of your labor pretty immediately. And you know that the relationship that you've had with the nonprofit and the impact that you've had on the nonprofit is sustainable. At the end of the day, I'm in it for sustainable change over anything. And as your programs mature, you start to get there and evolve. How do you communicate your story to investors and the media? Yes, so Julia Wilson is in the room, raise your hand. She is the investor clients media czaress. I'm gonna give you that title. And so it has been a journey. One of the things that, because of the environment and atmosphere that we have at Nielsen, and something that actually we've kind of learned is very rare, we have a really close relationship with our IR team, a really close relationship. And so we talk about things like continuous improvement, and it's a very honest relationship. I'm setting the mood. Do you like it? It's a very honest relationship, knowing that, listen, when an investor comes and they evaluate Nielsen's portfolio, are they going to make or break whether they invest in the company? No. Right? I wish they would, kind of, but no. However, is sustainability starting to be a part of that conversation? Yeah. And is that a game changer? Absolutely. And so we do things like we are a member of a bunch of organizations where they allow us to bring together the investor community and our CEO and our investors to talk about what they're looking at as it relates to ESG, because ESG is broad. So to talk about what they're looking for, what they're looking at, and what they want to hear, which then informs our public reporting as an organization. And so as long as we can keep that dialogue open, when investors inquire, our investor relations team connects with our team, and we're able to make that connection internally. From a media perspective, storytelling. And when I first joined this role, we were kind of quiet about the things that we did as an organization. We wanted to be humble, we didn't want to brag, and it took some education and convincing to show that communicating about what you do from a corporate responsibility perspective, that's not bragging. It's showing that you care. And it's showing that you care for the communities in which you operate. And all of us, as consumers, want to know that we work for a company that cares for the communities in which it operates, and that we live and play and work in every single day. And so we share what we do as a company through our stories. It's the best way for us to own the message, to tell it in our authentic voice, and to show our various stakeholders that we're invested in continuous improvement. And so strong internal relationships with investor relations teams, with our operations teams. We have a communications business partner that sits with our team to really tell that story has been key for us. Because with Nielsen, it's not something that people innately know what Nielsen's corporate responsibility stance would be. They're first trying to figure out who we are and what we do. And after they do that, they're also then trying to understand, well, what would Nielsen think about ESG? And so storytelling is very key for us as an organization. All right. Would disaggregating data by gender for the advancement of women's financial inclusion fall within Nielsen's technology pillar? Yes. Yes, it would. I would need to know more about that one. So, women's financial inclusion. My short answer is yes, but I would encourage you to have a conversation with me after this. And last but not least, can you speak more on the work with diversity and inclusion? Yes, diversity and inclusion. Is it reflected internally in the company or just external programs? Yes, so we have a chief diversity officer, and diversity and inclusion is, from a corporate responsibility perspective, we do a lot of work with nonprofits as it relates to D&I to help them understand who the consumers are that are interacting with their nonprofit, to help them understand what the needs are of communities that are in need and have certain challenges. You have to think about it, we have a lot of that consumer data, and so we work with nonprofits that have a D&I mission to help them really understand what the needs, challenges, and opportunities are of the audiences that they serve. So that's what we do from a CR perspective. As it relates to internally, absolutely. So we have the usual suspects, employee resource groups. At Nielsen, I think we're up to 9 globally. We have a robust diversity and inclusion program. It's actually Energize Week for us at Nielsen, where our ERGs activate for a week around diversity and inclusion initiatives. Just started yesterday. And it's ingrained in how we consider, in our consideration set for new associates and new members of our organization. It's something that our CEO talks about regularly. It's important to him, it's important to our board, and something that we don't just talk to talk. We try and have a concerted effort to walk it as well. Any other questions? All right, thank you all.
Thank you. We are so fortunate that you agreed to speak with us and to share your thoughts this morning. That was excellent. Thank you.